Hello, everyone. I'll apologize in advance if my voice is hoarse or if I get choked up. I just got back from the amazing D8 Summit in Dixon, Illinois. Dixon, the birthplace of Ronald Reagan, small town, cute middle America vibe there. And I've been talking for 2 days, and it has to do with the subject of tonight's continuing conversation about running games at cons. But before we jump into it, let me introduce myself. I'm Michael Dismuke. I am a blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures and Captain's Log, in addition to being a freelance writer for both of those aforementioned products. And this would not be a show unless we had the amazing Jim Johnson with us.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, everybody. I'm Jim Johnson. I'm the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG and the Captain's Log solo RPG, both published by Modiphius Entertainment, and co-host on this show for 130 plus episodes, going into year 2 here, going strong. And I'm very excited to have 2 returning guests with me and Michael tonight, to talk about our topic. So I'll have them introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right on into it. So Troy, why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Alrighty. I am Troy Mepyans. I am a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures, have been pretty much since it launched, and am captain of the USS Pioneer.
Awesome. Thanks, Troy. And Al, introduce yourself, please.
How's it going? My voice is raspy too. We started April vacation, and my students at school, we did a tug of war competition, and I might have cheered a bit too loudly, but we'll get through this. So I'm Al Spader. I'm a freelance writer and game designer. I was the lead writer on Star Trek Adventures Federation Klingon War tactical campaign, and I've also written my own game called Sentience 2D20.
Perfect segue to Al, because my voice is out, is because I think I'm the first claim to fame to say that I ran the Federation Klingon War tactical campaign for the first time at a con at the D8 Summit. I think I get that claim to fame for eternity. Put me in the Guinness Book of World Records. And it went really, really, really well. I just wanted to compliment you, Al, because the mechanics drew everyone in. They were terrified, horrified, scared, and enjoyed being admirals in Starfleet for the weekend. So really good lead writing on that book. And now let's go over to our subject here. So we're going to cover 2 subjects tonight, because one of the things I experienced that I was nervous about was last year was my very first time GMing at a convention. I went to Gen Con, August 2023. And I said, okay, I'm going to give my first try at this. And I asked a lot of advice from the gentlemen here, Al, Jim, and Troy, because they have a lot of experience running games at conventions or at shops. And I was nervous about it because I've always only really ran for friends or people online who are fellow writers and have a lot of experience GMing. And so I want to talk about the why behind why should we take up the mantle of going to Comic Cons, not Comic Cons, to gaming conventions first. So what's the benefit of going to these conventions? And 2, if we're brave enough to take up the mantle of GMing at these conventions, the wonderful blessings of doing that, and also maybe some caveats, some things we should be aware of taking on such a responsibility. So let's just go ahead and start. And Troy, I know you're an avid GMer. Why go to cons? What's your opinion? What's the benefit for the fan of games?
As a player, obviously, you're going to be able to sample different games, that kind of thing. As a GM, it gives you experience dealing with all different types of players. You've got your players that have never played a role-playing game in their lives. You've got players that have an encyclopedic knowledge of literally every RPG out there. And most of them kind of fall right in between that. But you have the different personality types, the different play styles, and it really broadens the way that you run the game. It teaches you how to adapt.
Good. Any other insights, Al?
Yeah, I think it's all about experience, right? You get to mold what your experience for a weekend looks like. Whether you want to sample something new or push your limits on something challenging. There are lots of games out there that do big interactive events, multi-table role-playing games. And these are the type of things that most people don't have a chance to play when they're at home. And from a professional perspective, I think it's really, really good for networking, right? You get to go out there and meet other writers and designers for different games and whatnot, share knowledge and things like that. And I think that's really important as well.
Jim, why go to cons?
I think more than anything else for me personally, it's to break out of my safety zone, right? Because when I write games and design games, like I know from my experience the type of players that I have in my group, right? And I can't just write for them. I have to write for a much broader audience. And in order to meet that, or in order to more effectively write to a broader audience, I have to meet a broader audience of players, right? And game masters. So it's an opportunity to get out there and try it. But in addition, I mean, speaking as the project manager, it's an opportunity to get the game in front of more people and to teach it to them. I think we can see online that there is always more players than game masters looking for groups. And I don't think Star Trek Adventures is unique by any means. I'm sure there's a lot of games out there that players want to play, but no one's willing or able to step up and be the game master, right? Because being a game master is a lot of work, right? Even for a simple game, it's a lot of work because you've got to learn the rules. And then not only do you have to learn the rules and kind of internalize them, you have to be prepared to teach them to somebody else or several somebody else's. And I don't think everybody has the teaching gene, right? Like some people are much better at teaching than others. And even in the 8 years I've been working on Star Trek Adventures, I've heard anecdotally, not specifically for this game, but just broadly across the industry, like a good GM will make the difference and a bad GM will turn somebody off a game completely, even if it's not the game's fault, right? If you have a lousy game master running a game and you have a horrible experience, or they're mean and nasty, or they're just not effective, it'll turn you off from the game. And that's a potential player that you've lost, and you didn't even do anything, right? Like as a designer, you're like, oh, I didn't mean for that to happen, but it wasn't my fault. It was just like circumstances, right? So it's a way, as a game designer and developer, it's a way to get out into the public and run the game. Not to say as it should be run, but I think the people who are working on the game probably are the ones who are most intimately familiar with it and probably have the best shot at least trying to convey that to a new group of people.
Yeah. I mean, to all of your points, I'm going to talk and throw in all your experiences too about, again, going to cons and the experience of playing games outside of Star Trek Adventures. I was impressed because I like studying other games just to learn, hey, that's a mechanic we may be able to use or something like that. And this was my first time ever seeing an Epic Adventure League. Does anyone know what that is? I was blown away by it.
Oh yeah, I've run and managed multiple D&D Adventure League epics, one at PAX Unplugged, and it's a multi-table interactive event where different tables are all competing to help overcome a certain story element, and what they do at their table impacts the greater whole. It's
blew my mind.
Yeah, Pathfinder does it too. Starfinder does it too. It's a fascinating concept.
Well, I was impressed, and of course, my mind is like, how could I do this for Star Trek Adventures? And they're starting to do it. Like League of Whimsy, Eric Campbell is starting to play with this concept online. But not only did each table have its GM, for those of you who don't know, haven't heard about Adventure League or this setup, which I'm one of the most uncool geeks out there. I'm just not up on everything, right? And so I'm sitting there totally getting schooled and watching this for 4 hours. But they had all these tables set up. People had, Jim, I'm going to love this. They had on their iPhones and tablets, they had their character sheets fully ready to go. And when they put points in there, it went into this master system. And so they could take their character to any other game and go play in another league somewhere else. But at this table, each table had its own GM. And then you had like a runner who was going between the tables, who I would call maybe like an Uber GM. And the Uber GM was going and saying the status of all the other tables and seeing how it impacts the overall campaign. Blew my mind. It was so cool.
Yeah, it's a really exhausting experience, but it's a very fulfilling experience, right? When you're running those type of giant organized. I think the one that I ran, the at PAX had 21 tables that we were managing. And we had 3 of the Uber GM runners, and then I was managing all of that. And every single person when they left was so excited and happy with the story and things like that. And just organized play in general, not doing the big epic type stuff, is a really cool experience that a lot of people don't get to have at their local game stores. But when you go to a convention, you can typically find for all games a table of organized play, which is pretty cool as well.
I was just going to put in Gen Con 2019, where I met Jim. The first game that I played was actually a Star Trek Adventures epic. I don't think it was official or anything, but it was, I think, 7 different tables. Each table was a ship, and then there were runners back and forth, and they were basically essentially the communication system between the various ships as we were trying to chase down augments who had released a virus that was attacking non-Iron Blood aliens.
Wow. I wish I was there.
Amazing.
I mean, all that sounds awesome, but collectively, what you're talking about, boy, that sounds like a lot of work. Here I am thinking, it'd be great to have like a teaching module ready to go, and just have 20 tables, but each one's doing their own teaching the game, as opposed to having this huge interlinked story. Like I see the benefits of both, absolutely, but just like the logistics of putting a gigantic multi-table event together is daunting.
Yeah, I was definitely tired watching it, but the excitement, going to what Al was saying, was that afterwards people were like, "Oh, thank you for doing that. How did you guys do this? And how many people, what was your adventure like?" And the conversation it stirred up by Saturday, because I was Friday night, Saturday, and they did against Saturday. I was really impressed. Another thing I like about it, for us forever GMs, raise your hand if you're a forever GM. Many of us are, right? It was so nice to sit down and at these cons and do learn the plays. I don't get that chance, rarely, in all my years, 30 something blah blah years of playing RPG. I've had, maybe, not including our rotating the schedule on our Discord, but in person, I've only had like 2 people ever run a game for me. So it was so nice to sit down, and they're so welcoming and so hospitable, and you sit down and you actually get to learn to play a game. And I bought 2 new games because of it, just learning it. So I think that's another benefit of going to cons.
Because we are one love RPG, you want to share the 2 games that you bought?
So I bought one called Cytosis.
Okay.
And you'll be very proud to hear I got Dreams and Machines from Odysseus.
Oh, all right.
So that one I thought my niece would really, really love. It's right up, I think, her alley. Kind of. It's not quite cyberpunk, but it's just, I think it hit the sweet spot, I think, for a teenage girl who likes RPG but maybe not into Star Trek. She could just start creating her own world from that.
Oh, that's cool. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, no reason not to support other creatives, right? Rising tide lifts all boats, and Troy's published his own, and Al's got his own, and I'm working on one, and Michael, I'm sure you're working on one. So this is the best time ever. I've said it before. This is the best time ever to be a writing creative, whether you're doing fiction or games, because it's so easy to publish, right? I'm not saying it's easy to make sales, right? Because that's a whole different thing. But in order to actually put something together and publish it somewhere online, there's lots of different venues, but it is the best time ever. And I think you've seen that explosion with Itch.io and other DTRPG and other venues for stuff. And I know I get it. Visibility is the biggest thing. Visibility in sales is hard, but somebody cracks that nut, then a lot of people are going to be very happy.
Yeah. Go ahead, Al.
I was just going to say, as a DM or GM going to a con, people spend money to sit at your table, right? They buy tickets, they sit down, and I've sat at tables that I know were not well run or organized, and I didn't feel like I got my money's worth. So when I go and decide to run games as a GM, I want to make sure that those people not only get their money's worth, but they're continuing to talk about it as they move forward. So that's something I take great pride in. And my local players know this, and they are excited whenever I run a game. But to just go out to like the New England area and meet that local group, it's just so fun to share a positive and exciting experience with those players.
Yeah, I mean, I learned so much too. I got to say how much I learned even about RPG by going there. I mean, this is my first time going to Middle America at the D8 Summit. Well, Indy was it, but this was my first time going to a really small town associated with a comic book shop that sells games also. And there was, that's kind of the capital of where D&D started, in that area of the planet. And I met a level of players that I've never met before. Like, I was like, whoa, this is like serious, more than just side hobby here. This is like, they're really into it. And I really appreciated, for instance, when I was GMing my game, even listening to the players who maybe are playing Star Trek Adventures on their own, saying, oh, I interpreted the way rules this way. This is what we do. I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. Maybe I haven't been doing it right. And I write the stuff, but I still always, you forget there's so many details sometimes. And that was really helpful, because some of the things they said, in this case, Andrew Luton, he's one of our super fans on the Facebook page. He makes music for people for free. He puts music out there if you type in Andrew Luton. And he taught me as much as I think I taught him from playing the game. And I was like, oh yeah, I did. And let me show you the rule. I was like, oh, that's a good point. And so I thought that open learning environment made the game even better too. As a GM, I learned a lot of new tips and tricks. Cool. All right. Any other reasons about going to a con or let's go through and maybe our favorite cons that you've been to, just so people, if they're wondering where they can go and start planning ahead for a mini trip. I say again, Gen Con, D8's small, it's quaint, but oh my God, you get treated like royalty when you go there. It's probably one of the most high class events I've ever been to for gaming. So again, it's small, but Connor Self takes care of you and his crew when you're out there. So those are the two I've been to. What about y'all?
My home convention, unfortunately, didn't happen this year. Marmalade Dog is Western Michigan University is in my hometown here in Kalamazoo. And that's pretty much been home base for me for over 20 years. But there's also UConn, which is out Eastern Michigan University, Ypsilanti, which is just outside of Ann Arbor. Very nice convention, very nice venue, and huge variety of stuff to play. And of course, Gen Con, I've been once. It was amazing. Hopefully I can go back again one of these days. If we ever meet there, I promise you, Michael, I will run the game for you.
Oh, I would cry. Can I just sit on your lap the entire time?
I don't have much of a belly anymore, so yeah, you could probably fit.
Deal.
So I think, unlike you, Michael, and you, Jim, I thrive with a lot of people around me. That energy just like fuels me. So I ran a lot of games at PAX Unplugged, and PAX East in Boston is pretty cool as well. I also like those cons because they have a lot of panels. They're not just about games. Lots of times when you get to the local level, you don't have panels where you really get to learn anything. And I'm always trying to hone my craft and learn stuff. So PAX Unplugged in Philly is probably my favorite con that I've been to. I have gone to Indy for Gen Con. I think that one might have been too many people, but I do like the bigger cons. I like really thrive in that atmosphere.
Yeah, Gen Con's a great event. It's a lot, especially for an introvert. It's 70, 80,000 people all compressed into a very, relatively small. It's a huge venue, but it's still a fairly small space. And I think I prefer the smaller cons, the smaller local cons. I've never been to a con as small as what you're saying, Michael, with D8. But I've got my feelers out. I'm investigating because I think next year I really want to start hitting some of the smaller local conventions and really continue to grow the game at the kind of grassroots level and have an opportunity to meet fans more one-on-one as opposed to a much broader swath. My favorite convention that I've always gone to is Shore Leave. It used to be in Hunt Valley, Hunt Valley. No, I can't remember now. Yeah, Hunt Valley. And then I think it's moved to, I think it's moved this year. They had to move it because the hotel got bought. But and that's a convention where there's just a ton of panels, and I've always been there as a writer guest, and so I got involved in a lot of the writing panels, like fiction writing and that kind of stuff. Not so much that they didn't have a strong game writing kind of panel or game development kind of panels. They had a robust game room, right, where people were playing board games and card games and RPGs and stuff, and that was a good opportunity to put something on the table and roll some dice with people, which is always fun. But yeah, Gen Con, great experience to go a couple times, but I don't know that I would go back anytime soon just because it's just so much. I was fortunate to find a couple little oases of peace and quiet when I was there. And I was like, I'm going there, and just to get out of the incredible amount of hustle and bustle that happens even just in the dealer room. And then the other challenge with big conventions like that is like some of them they have so much programming that I really felt like I was missing out on the stuff I really wanted to do, or there were just too many options, right? It's like, oh, I've got, it's 2:00 on a Saturday. I've got 10 different panels I can go to. Which one do I want to go to? And invariably it was like, oh, I don't have time to go to any of them, right? Because I'm either working the booth or just recovering. So I'm really eager to find more local conventions to go to that are within a reasonable driving distance, and just see what I can do next year.
Yeah. And I want to latch on to something that Al said too before we pass it over to is the networking opportunity. I have to admit that out of the first Gen Con when I went to, I got work. And this Gen Con, I met people who are like connect with us about working. And then they told me about other cons locally here in the San Francisco Bay Area that are great for networking. So if you are a writer or an aspiring writer, it's not easy to get gigs if you want to increase your freelancing. But once how it happened with me, I was running a game with some people and they were like, wow, we would love if you come here and run games with us. And what are you working on? And I that was really great conversation because I usually, if it's not Jim and, our small group of Star Trek Adventures people, I don't really get to talk shop with other people. And I did find that both conventions I went to, finding like-minded professionals who are kind of looking out for each other or looking to, have people in their back pocket if they have a project coming up, that never hurts. So I thought that was a benefit of a con.
I'd actually be eager to hear, Michael, your experience, and then, Al and Troy, if you've had this opportunity to go to conventions and hobnob with other developers and designers to get, insights and stuff. How have you done that without going to the bar, right? Like one of the hardest things that I had to overcome is going to the BarCon event, right? Because I don't like going to bars because, back in the day, they were full of smoke and full of people getting lit. And like some friends that I really had respect for, I lost some respect for because of the way they acted after they got heavy into it. And I was like, hey, this is not my scene, right? I was there because that was where everybody gathered, but I would love to find other places at a convention to connect with people and just sit down and chat, right? And a bar just really isn't conducive to that in my experience anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I just have good experiences at Gen Con. I was able to sit there and have long conversations with people who came to the Mepyans booth. So that was kind of cool. And of course, because, again, this is for people, maybe if you have one published thing, two published things, tell them, talk about what you did. And so again, the door was open through Mepyans for me to have nice publications to talk about. And that was where I was able to get an additional gig from that. At this convention, again, I'm going to pump up the D8 Summit. They actually had like a charity dinner. So if you got a certain level of sponsorship or bought a certain ticket, you could actually go to the charity dinner. And that was just a really nice place to talk to people. I was able to sit and talk quite extensively with Matt Forbuck, the Marvel multiplayer role player writer. Nicest guy in the world, him and his son. We had good conversations. So I've been able to avoid a bar, but I don't know. Now you're scaring me.
I haven't really had a chance since I started working on Star Trek Adventures to get at a convention because I've got 5-year-old twin boys, but they're starting to be a little bit more manageable. So I'm starting to branch out and do some local cons, and next year hoping to get some bigger cons, more in the Midwest, so that I can start reaching out and chatting with people. I think the biggest thing is just treat people like they're people, right? And don't force the conversation, let the conversation like flow. And if it starts coming to talking about what you're working on and what's going on and things like that, great. Otherwise, exchanging emails and things like that is also a great opportunity as well. So I'm looking forward to getting back into that life.
Yeah, I definitely I didn't come off too thirsty. I hate doing that anyways. I'm just, I've been advertising a long time looking for clients. It's like, don't come off thirsty, make them kind of want you. And so, you got to have those social skills.
Yeah. And I'd say, if you're going to conventions, if you're a creative and you've got something that you want to market, or, if you're an artist, you're a writer, editor, proofreader, whatever, like invest in the business cards. I know they're kind of old and dated at this point, even in the 21st century, but I've got a box of business cards that I bought 10 years ago. Like, none of the information has changed, right? Because my phone number is the same. My email address is the same. It's got my company logo on it and stuff. And it's like, you know what? When I went to Gen Con those 3 years, 17 to 19, I came home with a stack of business cards from writers and artists and other people. And I went through them. And I marked down the ones that I remembered that I thought we connected, and I thought maybe, I could do something with. And the ones that I didn't think I could, I recycle them because it's okay. It's like, you don't connect with everybody. But it helped me to have a physical reminder. And in fact, I tried to write notes on the back of the business card just so I could remind myself, who was this person and what did we talk about, just so I could try to have that reminder. So, in this day and age, getting yourself a box of business cards is not expensive. Heck, you can do it at home, right? If you have a printer, or you can go to your library with a printer, blast off a bunch of copies and cut them out, or get the perforated sheets or something. So certainly a useful tool. I don't know. I guess in this day and age, I guess people are trading information on their iPhones or something. I haven't quite gotten there.
Yeah,
yet,
sorry.
I'm not ready to do that.
I'm going to speak to the younger generation here. I have this thing. If someone's not on LinkedIn, I'm like, we're not doing business together. That's kind of like, I'm kind of stuck up like that.
Yeah.
I know it's bad, but I'm just like, nowadays, save some trees. If you're not on LinkedIn, don't.
I hear you. I think that's a whole separate conversation, though, because I'm not convinced LinkedIn is really a social media platform. It's not meant to be. I know people use it for that, but it should be, or not
business.
Should be.
It
totally should be business. More focused on business, and let Facebook and other social media channels be for social media. But that's neither here nor there.
Troy, you were going to say something about the networking experience?
Yeah, it's going to the smaller conventions, especially Marmalade Dog in particular, a lot of the younger crowd tends to go there. It's almost like a starter convention. In fact, last year, Aaron drove down on Saturday and was like instant celebrity.
Aaron Paulier or Dr. Aaron? Oh, Aaron Paulier. Okay, our science writer.
Yeah, Star Trek came down, and he visited, hobnobbed for a little bit, which was, I was just getting ready to run my first table, so the guys at the table were just awestruck, that he was there, and it's almost, for me, it's been networking in reverse, because I've been in role-playing games for over 40 years. I've been writing for 7, and I'm getting people that are just starting to get into it saying, how do I do this? And I'm learning that, I need to understand how I do it. And then that way I can convey it to somebody else. Because, one of the gentlemen at table that I ran last year had a fantastic mission, but he had no idea what to do with it. So we just sat down, and for about an hour, I just walked him through, hey, this is how this works. This is who you need to get in contact with, all this kind of stuff,
Perfect segue. So let's talk about that now. Let's segue over to, okay, we talked about why you go to cons and the benefits of that, but why take up the mantle of GMing? Let's bounce off what Troy talked about, and then we'll come around to Troy again. But what are the benefits of GMing? What's the impact it has on you, on the players, on maybe your favorite products?
Well, I think, as I said, providing an experience that's safe and has expectations built around it, right? You're talking about running a 3 or 4 hour session without a session zero in many cases, right? So you have to take and set those boundaries early. You have to talk to the players, see what they need early, 15, 20 minutes, and then get things rolling. The one thing that being a GM at a con has really helped me with is time management. Knowing what parts of missions I need to cut, hand wave, shorten, embellish, things like that. Because if you have a 3 hour time limit, you have to hit that end so that people can go get their lunch so they can play games later. So that was a big thing that I learned by running at conventions. And also just sharing my ideas and creativity with other people. I love running stuff that I've written and sharing it with them. I'm excited to get out and run some of the Star Trek Adventures con specific missions that have been written that I was a part of. So yeah, that type of stuff is really, really fun.
I think for me, I'm not going to run a game at a convention if I'm not passionate about it. Like it's just not in me to get paid by some company to run their game if I don't know anything about it. Like, I'm not a professional game master. This isn't being a professional game master is not my thing, right? It's not what I do. I could probably do it, but I need to have the passion for the game in order to actually be willing to break through the introversion and go to a convention and run it for complete strangers, right? So part of it is I am super passionate about a game, and I am so passionate about it that I want to take it to a convention and share it with people. So that's a piece of it. The other piece of it is, like, my entire professional career, even when I started off when I was 15-year-old snot-nosed kid, has always been in service. Customer service of some form, whether it's been food services or retail or into the professional world. I've always had either internal or external customers to take care of. And I think as a mentor and a teacher and a game master, it's like, I have this cool thing. I want to enable you to be awesome at the game table, right? Whatever your background is, maybe you've got a great life, maybe you've got a troubled life, whatever. At the game table, you have an opportunity to do something cool. And if I can help you unlock your creativity and tell a great story collaboratively with the other people at the table, and I can make that happen, I want to share that with people. And I have found that Star Trek is one of the best ways to do that, because it's so universal, and literally any genre of story will fit into it. And I think there's something in there for everybody. And if I can facilitate at the table a great 2 hour experience for a group of people, then that's an absolute win. Like, whether you buy it or not, I don't care. You came to the table, you tried it out, you tried something other than the most popular game in the world, right? You gave it a shot, tried something different, and that's really where I want to be.
It does too. I mean, just anecdote about that is, 2 people who played this weekend had never played Star Trek Adventures before. They like Star Trek, but they had never played it. The first one admitted that they would never become a GM, but nonetheless, they were like, "Oh, I want to play this again." And I said, "Okay, we'll go onto Discord. You might be able to find a group to play over Discord." He's a truck driver, and so he said that's a hard time for him to sit down and find a regular group to play. I went, "Oh, Discord may be the way for you." So we'll see what happens with Brandon. And then another person loves Star Trek their entire life. They've watched it since TOS. And he left I can't remember if he did it while we were there or whether he had already done it, but he bought the Lower Decks book because his daughter was eager to play it. And then we kind of had a really fun game, a little bit of humor in it. And he was like, oh, we're going lower decks on that. And it was kind of cool because I was able to write in it. I was like, I actually wrote in it. And so that influenced him, I think, a little bit more, knowing he's in touch with one of the writers, got to play around with it. And I'm like, hit me up on social media if you have questions. So I'm the kind of person where I don't like large groups. I can perform because I've been trained to in front of large groups and do it. But one-on-one, if I can talk to somebody and have a conversation, I'm more likely to, in a sense, make the sale for them to join and play the game. And I just feel that everybody I played with, I was able to have that connection with, be like, yeah, give me your input, what you think about it. It'll influence how I write in the future. And I like, being able to share that with them. What about you, Troy?
I think with me, it's just being able to, like Jim said, you're passionate about something. I can't run something that I don't believe in. I can't do something that I don't believe in, and just it's not who I am. And with Star Trek Adventures, I've been invested since the playtest. I've been involved in it, to a smaller extent, but the people that I've had at my table over the years, I've been able to show them, what collaborative storytelling is, because most of these people coming to my table are players of the world's most famous role-playing game. And a lot of them, the GM player relationship is adversarial. And I've taught, I can't tell you how many people, if you want to be a good GM, don't. Make them think you're their adversary. But, you're there to help tell the story. And if they enjoyed the story, if they had a good time, you did it right.
That's right. You're not there to beat them up, especially in 4 hours when you don't have time to recover it.
Oh, yeah.
Agree. I want to get back to that in a second, but let's kind of do things chronologically here, because I want to talk about some tips and tricks for running the game. But I want to start from the very beginning, playing off something that Al said about taking 15 to 20 minutes to have because you don't really have time for a session 0, but having 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm glad you said that, because I didn't have this conversation with you before, Al. But one of the things I did is I did an icebreaker. So and that's just one of my habits from running workshops anyways. And it was the simple icebreaker. In fact, I laughed, Jim, because I told him I'm going to give you the icebreaker that we give to every new guest that comes on our show, Continuing Conversations podcast. I said, what's your favorite Star Trek series and your favorite character, and tell me why. And that, I'm telling you, by the time we got done with that 10-minute session, we were laughing. We all had good stories, and they were ready to jump in. What are some of your tips and tricks for when you first sit down, getting people comfortable?
For me, it's, going to a convention. I don't know who likes what era. So I'll usually do, pre-generated characters. That way I don't have to mess with it. And I do it for each era. And that's pretty much my icebreaker, is just, here's what I have, TOS, Enterprise, Next Gen. What do you guys like and why? And there's been some lively discussions about, this is the advantage of that, or this is the advantage of this. And more often than not, you'll get people at the table going, I never looked at it that way. I ran 3 of my mysteries, mission briefs last year, and they were all original series. And the younger players, which blew my mind, glommed onto it faster, just because it was a little more action oriented. It was a little more loose, and then for the veteran players, I actually threw in the androids from Mud's Women.
Well, how can that not be fun?
Yep, because the bad guy that they were chasing, they were getting really too good at finding him. So he had a few duplicates. Turned out he was Section 31, and they had made a deal with Mud, and we went on from there.
Good. So again, you did a similar thing, like an icebreaker to find out what era. What about Al and Jim?
Absolutely.
What do you do to get people comfortable?
So the very first thing I say is, I need you to know that I'm your biggest fan. I'm rooting for you. I am going to push you, and but that's to tell a story and to provide excitement. Then I usually talk about safety mechanics. Like I'll always put out some X cards for people to use if they wish. If I have a consent form, or if I think that what we're running might run into something that is questionable, I'll always ask the table, hey, how do you feel about this? And if somebody says I'm not really good with it, I'll swap it out for something else. And I think that builds a rapport and shows that you trust your players, and you care for your players enough that they'll buy into the story that you're trying to tell.
Love it. Love those safety cards, or just asking, like when I did anecdotally, again, the Federation Klingon War, I preface it with some of you may be veterans, some of us may be veterans, some of us may be family of war. So I keep this at PG level. If you feel uncomfortable at anything, just make sure to let us know. So we did the same thing. So that's great. And what about you, Jim? What's your icebreaker to get people comfortable?
I mean, these are all great ideas. I think the primary icebreaker is what you were saying, Michael, is just get a feel for everybody. I ask their names, I ask their pronouns, so that I can jot it down, but then so that other people are aware of it, so that we're not accidentally, misrepresenting anybody at the table. And as they're telling what their favorite series and favorite characters are, I am actively listening, and I'm also doing the best I can to observe, just to see, is anybody having any sensory difficulties, neurodivergent issues, anything like that. And then as tactfully as possible, just, announcing to everybody, look, this is a safe space, safe table. If you can't be respectful and kind to your fellow players for the next 2 hours, no judgment, but this is not the game for you. Please, go somewhere else in a polite way, right? Like, don't F off, but this may not be the right table for you. But then also, just trying to gauge the group and say, all right, if at any point anyone has a concern or a mental block or just something, please raise the X card or just say something. We'll pause. We'll address it in the moment, and then we'll continue forward. And again, know that this is a safe space. Al, I love your idea of telling them that you are their biggest champion and that you're there to give them an awesome moment. And I think that's something I'll implement, is to say, I am here to facilitate your awesome experience, because you are all heroes. I want to make sure that you're all have that opportunity, that spotlight opportunity to be a hero. And so I am here to help do that. I will challenge you, because especially for Star Trek Adventures, I have this pool of threat that I can use, and it's not going to hurt you, but it's going to make things more challenging and more dramatic and more exciting, hopefully. And so just, get over that, not get over it, but like just overcome that fear of giving me threat, right? Because it's going to come right back to you in hopefully a more engaging experience, right? So just trying to write around that, talk around that. If I have time, I'll break out the safety worksheet. Sometimes we don't have that kind of time, but I think the X cards is enough to say, like, I keep it PG as well. I have a tendency to be a little profane, but I try to reel it in for a public event, especially when there's kids present, because obviously with my son, I don't want to do that around him, and I don't want to do that around other parents as kids, right? Obviously. So yeah, that's my approach anyway.
Good. One last thing that I did is I had everyone read out their pre-gen character sheets. I chose to use the ones that come with the Star Trek Adventures starter pack, even though we were playing in a different era. I just told them, pretend your costumes are different. This is because I wanted to actually show them how flexible the game is, that if you like a character, you can port them into any era with very few changes. And one of the things that I did is I had them read out all of their focuses and talents. And I had already taken note on their most obscure focuses and talents, because I wanted them to have a chance where only they could solve something in the game because of their obscure focus and challenge. So oenology, which is love of wine, came into play with the Klingon blood wine. Avian breeding, they creatively used it to fly a Klingon bird of prey because they had to steal one. So I really looked at them like, exactly what do you have so that I could have a time where they're like, wait a second, I have this, to show them how to fall forward into it. So again, letting them get to know each other's characters makes them feel special too. What other tips during the game do you do to make sure everyone gets a fair share and a fair spotlight for the experience?
Oh, go ahead now.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we talk about cross-talking and table talk in our initial statement, and how we try to keep that at a minimum. But I think instead of saying, what do you do as a general whole, individually prompting people to what their responses are going to be, especially if it's something that like isn't a combat necessarily, though I guess it could be. It's like, hey, Tessa, it's your turn to do something. What would you like to do? And if you do that, going around the table, everyone should get a share of opportunity. And if someone's struggling with what they want to do next, you say, okay, we'll think about it. We'll come back to you. Right. And then maybe next time you just say, hey, you're going to be up in 2 turns. I'm going to go, work with some other people, and then I'll come back to you. Things like that.
And, another thing too is, while you're watching and observing your table and, the game is undergoing and you're, going from player to player, kind of look to see who's jumping in to help, because it never hurts to have a little backup, especially if you're, like Marmalade Dog, you're in a single ballroom, man, it gets loud in there. And up until this year, I haven't had hearing aids, so I couldn't hear half of what was going on. And thankfully, a couple of my older players come every year and know that, so they would jump in and help out with that. But yeah, just watch, see how people react, and then adapt.
Good point. I didn't even think about that. And it was loud where I was at too. And fortunately, someone very nice, I think it was Brent or Brandon, actually, after I finished running the session, walked up to me and handed me a handful of throat lozenges and says, you're going to need these. And I was like, I love you. And definitely true.
I do want to mention something that Troy started talking about there. And, as far as the hearing aids go, and all players are going to need different things in order to be successful at the game. We call those accommodations, right? And some of them might know what accommodations they might need. Like they might need to stand. They might need to roll their dice in their dice tray all the time. They might need to take breaks. And as the GM, if you can get that information up front, like if someone knows, hey, I'm hard of hearing, can I sit to your left so I can use my good ear? Do that for them. And then others who might not understand or know that they need some type of accommodation, just be mindful of what's going on around you. Like if you see someone's getting fidgety or always checking their watch, maybe it's time to give them a break to go to the bathroom, or to get a snack or something like that. So you have to be very aware of the needs of everyone at the table as well.
I love that. In fact, there's something that happened too that I never talked about with the group, but I noticed they all tabled their cell phones. That was so cool. Now, once we had the break, then they all pulled out their cell phones and started doing stuff. But I thought, now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't have one problem with distracted player with cell phones there, but that might be something you may need to discuss at the opening, what the etiquette is for that, right?
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to mention is somewhere near the front, just mention everybody, please put your devices on mute or vibrate, put them in your pocket, put them in your purse. Like, if you got to have them on the table, okay. But ideally it's not on the table, or at least it's face down so that you're not seeing the stuff pop up, every 10 minutes or 10 seconds or whatever, depending on the person. And I think what everybody else was saying is it's just being, I think one of the tricks of being a game master, especially in a face-to-face environment, is you need to be really aware of your players, who's being really quiet, who's kind of like just jumping in every opportunity to do something because they want, either they're a spotlight hog or they're vibing off the other people who are being quiet, and they're just jumping in and going. It's like it's okay to kind of manage that crowd control a little bit, and like, okay, say, okay, great, you're working on that. I'm going to come back to you, and then maybe focus on someone who's a little more quiet, or someone who's a little more withdrawn, or maybe needs a little bit of a pull to be drawn into the event. One trick, I haven't done this with Star Trek Adventures, but in other games, like if you're tracking initiative or something and you happen to have a whiteboard, it could be useful to ask somebody to kind of manage that workflow a little bit and say, hey, there's 5 players in the game. Can you just check off who's gone in an initiative round or something, just to help us keep track of who's doing what? I mean, in Star Trek, it's pretty free form. You don't have a set order. It's just like, okay, have you gone this round? Have you gone this round? Have you gone this round, or this turn, or whatever? And having a player kind of help manage that a little bit is useful. Reference cards are handy. Like if someone's managing the reference cards and they need to kind of do the hand somebody a combat card if they don't remember what to do, that's useful too. So like, give little assignments to players if it's appropriate to do so. But I think more than anything else, as a game master, I've really tried hard, because I'm an introvert and I know how I am with new people. I want to be careful about like encouraging people to participate without them feeling like they're on the spot, right? Like, I don't want to force you to play, but if you want to contribute, here's an opportunity. We're holding off the ones who really want to participate long enough to give you your moment, and just work it that way. So I think it's one of the art and jobs of the game master is to be an active listener and to be a facilitator, right? And that can be hard work depending on your group. But I think it's really, really worth doing it at least once.
I do want to
be a cheerleader.
Go ahead, Troy.
Oh, I was just going to say, be a cheerleader. If you have new players or you have players that are a little more timid and they go ahead and, jump in, or they come up with a great idea, say something, just say, hey, that was a great idea. I think that's, we're going to go with that. Or, great for you thinking of that or speaking up or whatever. Even after the game, just say something, hey, I really enjoyed having you at the table. You did great. I would love to see you keep doing this.
Yeah, I want to add that if you're going to a con to run Star Trek Adventures for the first time, the Game Master Guide is your best friend. If you get to page 102, we start talking about types of play styles. And when we talked about the Spotlight Hog, I think we called it an enterprising play style. And there's little suggestions in here about things you can do to get those people engaged in the story that you're telling. There's also in here about a piece about meeting everybody's needs. So there's things about how could you adapt for people that have sensory things that they're working on, or people who have attention span issues, things like that. Super, super useful tool if you're going to a convention.
Very good. Yep. We had a lot of experts working on that. Many decades of experience. Exactly. Many decades. For those who are watching or listening to this on a podcast, Al pointed to himself slowly when I said that last part. But yeah, many decades of experience are packed in that book. And I was happy to see that they actually had it on sale. That and the Player's Guide at one of the people who was selling different RPG books had those books there and spoke highly of them. So that was super. That made me happy to see.
That's awesome. One thing, just as an aside, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because this isn't going to come out until May, right? Mid-May.
Correct.
I have not had, Al, and you'll have to check me on this, but I have not had an opportunity to really spend a lot of time going back through the Game Master Guide. But I am willing to bet most of that is going to port right into second edition with zero issues. I think there's so much great general purpose advice in that book about Star Trek Adventures and about running the game on a 10,000 foot level. I think that's still going to be absolutely relevant to everything that we're doing with second edition. So not to say that I'm plugging it, but I just think if you've already bought it, awesome. You're going to still get a ton of use out of it. So no worries there.
Yeah, on social media, people have already said that they use it for other games besides Star Trek. They said the meat in it was good, so that's true. Another thing that happened that again, me learning like, oh, I need to start really listening to my players more because I know I play on Discord mostly, so I'm not able to hear their banter. But in a game to kind of make them fall forward and not be afraid of it and actually add a little humor. When they were doing certain tasks, I was listening to other people saying, well, if you mess up on this, this is going to happen. You're going to like burn your hands, or that paint's going to explode into your face and block your face mask. And so if they rolled a complication, I was like, that's exactly what happened. And so we started joking, and the first game turned a little lower decks in an amazing way, with it, plenty of targs to go around. But I was like, I really listened to them so that they had an idea. Back to what you said, Troy, there's no bad ideas. And I let them almost call the complications out of their fears, which made them feel like they were part of the narrative. And then another thing I did at the beginning, going back to the beginning again, I let them know, don't get fixed to your worksheet. Since you're all familiar with Star Trek, just do what the characters would do. You're all versed in everything. Don't freak out about the dice numbers and probabilities. And that loosened them up, because then they were doing stuff that, they weren't getting stuck with just doing con actions or just doing security actions. They would try whatever came up in their mind, and they were able to experience success doing that, which really made them, flexible and loose in play.
I got two thoughts on that. These are two completely divergent thoughts because you covered such a great range of stuff in there. And I'm going to try to remember them because I have a feeling I'm going to forget one of them. And I've already forgotten the first one, damn it. All right, the second one, shoot, I should have written it down, man. Oh well. One of the things I love to do with my gaming groups, and this is more for the established groups that I'm playing longer term campaigns with. I haven't tried this at a convention yet, but now that you've sparked the idea in me, I think I should. Is that when I'm running a campaign, I always record them. Like if it's a face-to-face game in a group, I have a little voice digital recorder, and I record the session. I get everybody's permission, obviously, but I record the session because exactly what you're saying, Michael, like during a break or something, I'll get up and I'll go to the restroom, or I'll go get a snack or something. And the banter around the table is often oriented to what's happening in the game. And sometimes little nuggets of gold get dropped that I will listen to later outside of the game environment and say, oh, that was a really good idea. I'm going to fold that into the next session. And they're going to be surprised because they think I'm not paying attention, or I wasn't in the room when they were talking about it. But now that I'm thinking about it, applying that to a convention, even though you may not know the people, if you get everybody's permission to record the session and you're using it for your own notes, if they have a conversation about the episode or something that is like constructive criticism, like, oh, I wish this was going this way, or maybe this could have been done differently, that's feedback that you could use to make your next sesssion even better, right? So again,
I did exactly that.
Yeah, don't do it unless you have everybody's permission. But I have found a huge amount of value in recording sessions and then just refreshing my memory later and just like figuring out what little nuggets of gold can I pick out of this. And I'll try to remember the other thing, but I'll pause for now.
Well, I was going to say, what I like what you said is I ran the same adventure, and it excited me that they were not the same. I mean, they went completely divergent. The first one turned into a hilarious Lower Decks. The second one was straight up Federation Klingon War, Discovery Season 1, scary Klingons. I mean, it was sad. There was some tragedy in it. And that made me feel very inspired as a storyteller and GM. Like, wow, these are gold. Like the dice do so much to create individual experiences for everyone. Really made me love the storytelling genre even more, with that. All right. Okay, cool. So with that, I think, we covered why go to cons. For those of you who are maybe never thought of going to one, find your local con and go. Something that I did, which I asked permission from the people at the table. I said, hey, do you mind if I just observe? I don't want to play. I just want to sit here and look at it. I'm interested in the genre. Every time they said yes. And I was able to sit and actually just watch people play. And yeah, I kept engaged enough to be respectful, but I was still able to do some reading on the side and, take some notes and stuff like that. But go to cons. I think it's important to support small businesses, and these cons are small businesses. Many of the local vendors come out, local comic book shops. And we should all be in our local comic book shops or game shops supporting if possible. I mean, get away from the TV, get away from social media. Games bring people together. So cons are a great place to find out who your local vendors are and what local gaming stuff is going on in the neighborhood. So that's my reason, thing about going to cons. And then with that, why don't we just have one go round? Last thing you have to say about cons. Let's go Troy, Al, Jim, and then we'll get into gratitude.
All right. Last thing I have to say about cons is just, step outside your comfort zone. Don't play the same game you've been playing for the last 40 years. If there's something there that's new or different or, just piques your interest, jump in on it. You know, and like you said, if you're not sure, can I sit in? Do you mind if I watch? And then, if they're running multiple games, maybe jump in on the next one, but don't be afraid to, take a risk.
Good. I mean, to that add, if you want to write games, you have to study games. If you want to learn how to write, you got to study writing. If you want to gauge crowd reaction to stories, you got to watch people play these games and see what makes them tick and what makes them jump. It'll make you a better writer or game designer. Al?
If you're considering going to a convention to run a game as a GM, but you're not sure if you really want to do it or how to prepare or anything like that, reach out to a local game shop and see if they have any tables where you can practice your craft as a game master. When this releases, free RPG Day is coming up. Reach out to your local game shop and say, hey, are you running these games? Don't just go and get the free quick start for a game. Say, hey, can I also run this here at your shop? Things like that. That's a way that you can prepare yourself for the larger setting of being at a convention.
Yeah, I'll just add, be prepared as much as you can. Be flexible, right? I mean, you never know what players you're going to get at the table. So don't go in assuming you're going to be on the one path, right? You got to be flexible and creative and be willing to have fun. And, if possible, try to have something on hand for the shop. If you're going to a shop, just to say thank you for their time. Talk to the shop, obviously, because like some of them, in my experience, some of them want to have even like a modest buy-in, like they want the players to buy a set of dice or whatever. But it just, talk to the shopkeeper just to make sure that you're not accidentally, stepping on any toes or anything. But be prepared and have fun. Like, this is a fun hobby. It's a super fun hobby, and everybody's got their first time, and you've always got your first game master that you got stories of. And so like, you're going to be that game master for somebody else. So try to do your best to give them an awesome experience so that they will stay in the hobby, whether they stay in your chosen game or not, doesn't matter. There's a million billion games out there that they can play. They will find their niche eventually, but you're giving them you're potentially giving somebody a gateway into this awesome hobby. And, no pressure.
And I love that you said that too. Keep a couple ducats, keep some latinum in your pocket for when you go to these local vendors. I do that. Even if I can't find a product that I like, I can't tell you how many boxes of exploding kittens I bought to give away as gifts. So I go in, I just want to buy something. So exploding kittens is always a win. If I have to, I'll go on Monopoly deal. But my point of the matter is, if I don't find something I want at the local shop, then I'm going to find something as a gift for somebody else, at least a comic book or something, just to keep them going. All right. So let's go into gratitude. I'll launch it and we'll go in the same order, closing us out again with Troy, Al, and Jim. My gratitude is going definitely to the D8 Summit and Connor Self, who is completely selfless. And what I mean by that, he has to be one of the nicest, most hospitable people I ever met. Picked me up at O'Hare Airport, drove me an hour all the way into Dixon, Illinois, to be at the con. And while there, just made sure I felt comfortable, introduced me to a lot of people, to the people he plays games with. And we just had a blast. So Connor, that's for sure. And of course, I have to say to the people who sat down at the table with me, Andy Luton, who watches this podcast, I was so happy. He's like, I listen to it every week. It almost made me cry. I was so happy to hear that. And also Ben Heisler, Paige Lateman, who sat down at the game, amazing players, a lot of positive feedback about how the game is designed. And also Sean Banerjee, who is now like a great friend. They were amazing at the table again, a game designer also. So I want to just thank everyone who sat down, because I had as much, if not more fun than them, especially when they rolled 20s and I would start cackling loudly as I grabbed it and held it like a little wicked person about to destroy them. But they had a really good time. So I want to thank all those people who sat with me this past weekend. Troy.
I want to thank the players. Over the last 20 years that I've been running games, it's the players that have made me come back. Seeing the wonder on their faces, the enthusiasm for getting involved in a story, or the kid that's never played before and all of a sudden says, "This is amazing." That's why you do it, because you love the hobby, you want to share it with other people, and they're the ones that are going to keep you coming back year after year.
Indeed.
My gratitude this week is going to go out to everybody that has ever either volunteered or decided to organize a convention. It is not an easy thing to do, not even with just 150 people. It is chaotic, it is hectic, and we appreciate you doing good for the gaming community, and giving us all a safe place to enjoy the things that we love. So if you've ever run a convention, organized a room at a convention, thank you.
Sweet. I love that just the idea of everyone's welcome to play. I just love that everyone's cool on this playground, a vibe that these con organizers create. Jim?
Yeah, I mean, thank you to all the convention volunteers, organizers. That's often thankless work, and it's a huge amount of work depending on the convention. And like the bigger conventions, it's even more work, right? It scales up and down, and like even a small event, like you're saying, Al, I'm sure there's a huge amount of effort that went into that Connor would probably be very hand wavy and shrug it off, because just based on what little I know of him, I suspect he's that kind of person. But huge amount of work. Can't thank you all enough for that. Also, thank you to all the brick and mortar stores, everybody who's still running a brick. I mean, not to say still, but like I know it's been tough these last 20 odd years. Some of my favorite local brick and mortar stores have closed down because they just couldn't keep it going, right? But brick and mortar stores are the primary interface between the companies and the fans. And even the best website in the universe is not going to compare to having a table and the ability to sit down at that table with a game and crack open the shrink wrap, try it out, play it, have fun, meet other people. I mean, like I met my best friend by printing off a piece of paper saying, "Hey, I want to run Star Trek," and putting it up on the bulletin board 30 odd years ago, before there was an internet, right? And saying, who's gonna call? I don't know. And it just worked out. But like, I could not have done that if we didn't have a local game group, a game store to go and actually put that thing up there. I don't know that many stores do that anymore, but maybe there's still a few out there that have the pinup board, right? But thank you to all the brick and mortar stores. Can't thank you enough. And of course, thanks to the fans, everybody who goes to a convention to run a game, anybody who goes to a convention to play a game, right? You're curious, right? You want to play and have fun. And you just sit in on a game or join a table or something and open your mind to something new and different, because you never know what's going to happen. So thanks to all the fans for supporting the hobby, not just Star Trek Adventures. I think this is more broader than that for tonight. It's this is an amazing hobby. I've had some of my best experiences playing RPGs of all kinds of different sizes and shapes. And I want to share that with as many people as I can for as long as I can. So, I'm excited that there's so many people that have that similar mindset that want to do that too. So go explore, be bold. And like Troy said, take a risk, a risk, right. Go have fun.
If each time we play with somebody, we grow the game by one or two people,
one person,
we keep it alive. So that's great. All right. So until next time, IDIC. Thank you, Troy and Al, for joining us.
Live long and prosper. Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Michael. Be safe, be well. We'll talk to you soon.